How you doing? My name is Alan Matthews, and I have a great lesson for you today on Johann Caspar Mertz's Maestoso. And I just ran across this in a book somewhere, and I just thought it was a great little piece. Had a lot of great lessons in it, little details that happen very often in larger pieces, but this one really condenses it down, mainly a little rhythmic figure, and also some musical issues with a back and forth type of conversation that you'll hear in just a minute that is also really fun to play with. So to begin with, I'm just going to play this piece for you. This is the Maestoso by Johann Caspar Mertz. Just giving it a preliminary sight read here. So let's take a look at the score right now. So to begin with, here we have our full score here, 4 lines of music. And so to begin with, I'm just going to look for major points of interest, things that are different than other things, just to take a look. So just right off the bat, I'm looking at this opening part right here, are big long notes. So we have great big long notes right here. And then we do something different right here. Do you see that? Really, that whole thing right there. We introduce this rhythm right here. There it is again right there. This 16th note rhythm, we'll talk all about it. These different things. And then what happens is we get this again. This is very similar to this right up here. And then what happens? We get something that is very similar to this again. So that we have this back and forth type of thing, this kind of question answer type of format. It's kind of a conversation. Well, then something completely different happens because we start into this rhythm that's consecutive, right? Let's choose a different color for that one altogether then. And then we have this stuff right here, and it goes on and it goes on, just looking through, it goes on pretty much all the way to the end, right? Is this same 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Like, we'll talk about how to count it later, but it's basically this whole thing until we get to right here. And then there's something different at the end. There's just like this beat and the 2 big beats at the end. Bump, bump. There's just two of those two. Within that, if we just look at the dynamics that we're given, then we're given, well, for one thing that we can also tell from before is that we had this loud, soft thing going on right here. I'm getting into a lot of ink on the page right here. But then we have it again. We have a piano with a crescendo on it. And then another piano with a crescendo on it. And then another piano with a crescendo on it. And then nothing else to the end. So which is really interesting to do this three surges, like getting soft and then getting surging louder 3 times. I don't know if we're gonna question that just because we are. And so that's basically our 2 big sections, right? We have this first section, we're going to call it A, and then we're going to have the second section we're going to call B. There it is right there. So that's basically the whole piece in just a bird's eye view, overview there. And so let's get another one going on here. Ah, a nice clean score. Great. So now let's actually get into how we are going to play this stuff. So here again we have our A section and our B section. And there are a whole lot more notes in the B section, it looks like. But are there more measures? I don't know. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the thing. So there's 8 measures in the first, and then 9 measures in the second. So they're pretty equal with this extra bar on the end, or somewhere extra bar in the B section. This is just an interesting thing to note. It's not like this really means anything at this point, but it's just, we're just observing these different things. We're just checking things out. So let's talk about then how to jump into this first section right here. Actually, before we even get started, we have this rhythm going on, right? And this rhythm is all over the place. It's in most bars of this piece. We have this rhythm. And so let's talk about how to do this rhythm. This is our basic rhythm that we are looking at, is this right here. And so first off, we have to understand 16th notes. So I'm just going to give you the quick review or primer or whatever it is on 16th notes. We have quarter notes, we have eighth notes, and then we have 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4 16th notes make up the quarter note, yes? So that means that whenever we've got a quarter note, we can have these 4 16ths in it. The way that we count these, the way that I count these, and a lot of people count these, is 1 E and A. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Because this is basically just 1. Quarter notes, we just count 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighth notes, we count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 16th notes, we count 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So we have these, right? So here we have this dotted eighth and 16th. So if you just remember, the dotted eighth means it gets half again as much as the as an eighth note, which means 3 16ths, baby, basically. And so if we have these, it's basically like tying these first 3 notes together, and then we have the other one. So the way to count this would be 1 E and A. So 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3. And I would just do this. I would just count it and clap it and count it out loud. 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A, 1. Because this is going on all over this piece, right? So you want to get super solid on this rhythm. Now here's the next bit, and this is the exciting thing that you can't get in a book, is that whenever it takes longer to hear long notes and rests than it does to hear short notes, because it's easier to hear the initial playing of the note, but it takes longer for the ears and the brain to actually catch the longer one. So you want to do is make sure that you wait as long as possible without being late to play that last 16th. So 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3. Basically, it means don't be early. It's not 1 E and da, do, da, 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 like a big. It can't slow down because then it gets into a triplet, and it's just not clean. Especially with something like this Maestoso, then you want it to be absolutely crisp. You just want to really just boom, 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 You want it to be really clean, really precise with the rhythm, almost like a march or something. Very majestic. And so with these then, 1, 2, 3, you want to really boom, da da, 1 E and a 2. So basically, you want every single time, you want these to be as crisp and as precise and as powerful as possible. And I like to bring these out oftentimes. Dum, da, dum, da, dum, 1 E and a 2. Because it's the anticipation of the beat right before it. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 is oftentimes more exciting than 1 E and a 2 3 1 2. It's instead of making the downbeat the louder of the two, you want to make the upbeat. In other words, this 16th note right here, you want to make it the loud one. And so basically you want to accent it. Accent the 16th note at the end. So here we have, here we have this right here, right? With the dot there and the 16th there. accent it. 1 E, a 2 E, a 3. And it doesn't have to be a ton. It doesn't have to be like crazy accented, but give it a little bit of extra punch, and it makes the whole thing a little more lively, a little more up. Puts a spring in your step, so to speak. So now that we know all about the 16th notes, how we're going to handle them, let's go into how we're going to actually play this bit right here. So first off, just like everything else, we're going to just be really, really crisp with this rhythm. Because these are long notes, they're going to set the tone for the entire piece. So we have 1 and 2. This is a whole note or a half note, right? 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we're really setting up this like this half note pulse, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, right? We have this pulse. So this is setting up the structure for the entire piece, is that big pulse right there, right at the beginning. Now, for drama, I like to accent this 8th note, this upbeat right here, right in front of the long note, because I just think it's more interesting than the downbeat. I think this is more interesting than this is right here. And so I like to bring that out. It's also the syncopation. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, dot home. It leads us right to it, dot home. And so you don't really need to accent this dom, dom, da dom. It's not that great to do it that way. Also, if you watched other videos, then we also avoid accenting the high note of the phrase, and this is the high note of the phrase. So basically, you don't want to accent that anyway. Dom, dom, da dom, boom. This I would think of as an upbeat to this stuff. Dum dum. So this is our little phrase right here. I didn't quite square it off there. There it is. And then this note is the upbeat to the next thing, instead of this being the close of this. It's a semantic difference perhaps, but instead of making it dom dom da dom dom, instead of that, think of it as dom dom da dom, and then the next thing is and dum dum da dum dum dum. And so that way it actually leads forward instead of closing off, even though everything on the page looks like this is our, everything looks like this is our group. Instead, make it this be our group that way, and not this into the group. Think of this as the upbeat leading to this. So if you practice this, you could go and dum dum da dum 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 bum ba dum dum. You could move forward with it that way, so that way it's connected and it's not so compartmentalized. Even though it is, it's like a conversation. They're doing it forte and piano, things like that. I would still think of it as the upbeat leading forward. It's a semantic difference, but what are you gonna do? It's the way that we structure these things in our mind leads us to the way that we actually play them. Just like in speech, the way that we actually group our thoughts together or the way that they come out. And that's why when you just hear somebody reading out of a book and they're not very good at reading, it doesn't sound good. It's not like telling a story where you can just talk and it sounds like somebody's telling a great story. It sounds like somebody's reading, and it's not really that enjoyable to listen to somebody reading who sounds like they're reading. It's harder to connect to what they're actually saying. Same thing here. Same thing with the music. We can actually then make it to where it sounds more like we're telling a story, which leads forward instead of just saying each word or playing each note as it is. Done. So now that we've got that, the exact same thing happens here, right? So I would treat this basically the same as this. We just did this work on this one. we can also do it to this one. Now, for practice purposes, what I would practice these two things next to each other. So check this out. 1, and count out loud while you're doing it, because you're going to want to count. You're going to want to really count when you're playing this. You don't want to just wing it because it'll make it loosey-goosey, and so you want it to be tight. So always count this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Whoa, I played the wrong notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you could actually come off and play the first note of the next measure just to connect things in your practice if you like. And then play that a couple of times, and then go to that next little section right here and play it right next to it. So then we're going to go boom, dum, da, dum, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Cross over the bar so that then you get used to connecting things and the timing of the connection. So you're actually, yes, I put that little square all the way to there, but really when you're playing it would go to there. Yes, we've talked about this one in other videos like this as well. Always practice going over the bar so that you can build the continuity in. When you put the pieces together, they flow together better. Great, so practice those two pieces together. After we've got that, then we can look at these next bits here. And so now we've got this stuff, right? Now, if you'll notice, there's an accent right here, right? And I wouldn't do it. The reason being is that it's the first note, and I just don't really understand a good reason to accent it. Musically, I don't understand why we would. Just as an exploration of it, I'm just going to play it. So, sorry, count out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Versus 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. For my money, and this is purely a personal choice, I would not accent it right there. And I don't know if Mertz wrote that or if an editor wrote that, but I wouldn't do the accent personally. I would basically think of it as a long short. If you remember a long short from other things, is that whenever we have a note, we have like long notes, other stuff, and then a note, other notes come back in, then we play the first one soft, and that way they really connect. They can really connect through, and it keeps the keeps the ball in the air. Instead of starting over with a new thought, a new sentence, then it would be a connection on. Keeps it all in the same paragraph, so to speak. So I wouldn't accent that. And then I would think of this whole thing as one big crescendo. But yes, I like the starting softly like they're saying right here. Dun, dun, da, dum. And so here's our rhythm, right? Dun, dun, ba, boom. Here's this rhythm again. Some green. Boom, dum. So as soon as you get to right here, don't wait for this beat to start counting your 16th notes, 1 eanda, 2 eanda. This will be 2 eanda just because it's the second beat. Instead, count it on your first beat. Start counting here, 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3. That way you can just like sink it right in. It's just like you just drop it right in. If you wait until the beat that you're going to start counting the 16th notes, there's a potential that it'll be wishy-washy or something. So better to just start a beat or two ahead, or just all the way from the beginning, but then you might be out of breath. Your tongue might be tired from saying all those 16th notes. So you can start counting here, 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda. And so that way you can 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3, 4. That way you can just drop this 16th note. Boom, you can just drop it right in. Okay. That gets us to this beat right here. Oh, but also with this, it's a pretty sweet line because as far as fingerings go, we're basically just sliding up this. This is part of an A minor chord, and we're just sliding it up. Da, 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 da. It's just the two fingers sliding up one fret, so it's super easy in the hand, which is really nice. Here's the thing though, is that because we have da, da, 2E and A3, you have to be sure that you are right on time with that third beat. Dum, dum, da, dum. You can't do dum, dum, da, dum. By moving that, use the open E on the 16th, on that last 16th of the second beat. Dum, 2, A3, A3. Use that note, this note right here, use this to move up to that so it's really tight. Make your movements as quick and lightning fast and tight. And you might just practice this. The way I'm doing that, of moving it so segmented like that, is keeping my thumb on the back and then moving against it. So the thumb is kind of a brace and you're just kind of twisting on it so you can go really articulates it well. So my little guitar support fell off here. If you're wondering, this is called the Gitano, G-I-T-A-N-O, guitar support. I totally swear by them, and it's hard for me to play without it these days. And so now let's look at this right here. Whenever we have repeated notes, right, this kind of thing, this issue right here is really common. And that's that we have these two quarter notes at the end going forward to the downbeat, right? 3, 4, 1. Well, it's not da, 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 it's don't. Ends the first off, so we have this is one section. This is another section. So we want to separate those two quarter notes that are the same notes, those repeated notes right here, these notes right here. We want to separate those and play it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And so now this is the upbeat. This leads to this. And just like we were talking about up here with this type of thing, the exact same thing happens right here with this quarter note. So we want to separate that and accent it. There's a lot of ink stacking up right there. Accent that note, basically. And that way you can decrescendo off to this one and it sounds, it's just a really nice culmination. Da, 2, and da, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, with this one down here, wait as long as you possibly can to play that 16th note and accent the 16th, dum, da, dum, or crescendo all three notes. Those are your two options. We can go 3, 1, or 3, 4, or 3, 4, and just push forward all three of them. Whenever we have repeated notes, if you recall, we typically crescendo them anyway if they're the same rhythm. This is not the same rhythm, right? But it's still but they are repeated notes and it's a gesture. Dum, da, dum. I would keep them all strong and just plaster right across them. Boom. There we go. So next we get to move into the B part. So now we've got that. Again, practice this part and this part next to each other. Practice one, then practice the next. Okay, so now let's get into this B section. So the B section starts right here, right? Again, just like before, I would throw away that accent right there because we're starting piano. If we want to surge, then there's no reason to accent the first one. Just low dynamic, high intensity, very rhythmically precise, but low volume right here. Instead of accenting it, we can do a better job than that. So then if you'll notice right here, I want to point out something. This note right here is a typo on this score. And in the ones that you can download along with this, there's links below this video. It is actually correct in the other one. I don't know why this one somehow made this typo, but this should be an A, not a B. And in the other ones, you can also get the tab versions and the fingered versions. And we're going to talk about fingering right here for just a second. But because there's something different than in the fingered version. And it also is a really common issue. So I just want to talk about it, right? A fingering issue. But notice that this is actually an A and not a B. So in looking at this B section then, if you'll notice, we have this up stems and we've got down stems, two parts of the music right here, right? So with these up stems and with these down stems, we want to approach them separately at first. So first off, we want to just clap the rhythm of this the up stems, because that's where the rhythmic complexity is, and really count just like we did before. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. So really just be able to get that super tight and be able to count it. Counting it in your head doesn't count, because you know what? You're not counting it in your head. People who can't count very well oftentimes will say, oh, I'm counting in my head, but really you're not counting in your head. So if you can't count it out loud, you can't count it. I'm sorry to be cold and stark like that, but it's absolutely true. If you can't count it out loud, you really can't count it, because if you can, then you can count it out loud. So counting it in your head is kind of you're not really doing it. It's kind of a cop-out. It's easier because whenever you get confused, you just stop counting and then you'll come back in when it's easy again. But you're not actually counting, just as a note to self there. So as we get into this right here, we want to play this. We'll do it with the second finger. 1 and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4. And it goes to there, and then this other line up at the top takes over, right? This stuff right here takes over at that point as far as the rhythm goes. So that leaves us with this bottom line down here, all these stems down notes. And so we want to just play those just by themselves as well. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That was all the way across to the next line across the bar. So notice that this is basically a chromatic line. We're playing every note. We're starting with the second fret, go to the third, go to the fourth, go to the open next string. We're skipping the first fret and then going 2 and then 3 with the E and F, and then go back down to, and then it goes to something different right there. So there's this little gap right here. Other than that, this entire line right here is chromatic. Chromatic. Not like you can read that anyway. So then putting them together, we're going to use the second finger, and that gives us the first finger for the B. 1, the 3, because the 2 has to stay there. The 3 will play the C. The 4 will play the C sharp. The open will play here. And then something happens. Because if we look forward, let's get a clean score here. If we look forward, then we have this full chord right here, right? And we want to be able to play this chord in some sort of way that makes it easy to get to this chord right here. So we want to plot this out well, and this is where fingerings really become important, is that we don't want a big gap. We want to be able just to smoothly go da 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 and just move from one note to the next. And so what that means is that we have to shift some things around. And honestly, this is kind of a tricky spot, because it has one of these spots to where it's pretty much you're going to have to break the rules on it a little bit. But to get to right here, to where this chord is easy, what we can do is we can change right here. Now on the score with the fingering on it, it actually says the 3 right here. However, that means that you have to do a really quick jump between these two. And that's pretty tricky to make it happen on that. But if you do it, if you make the switch from the 2 to the 3 right here, right there, instead, then you'll have the full quarter note to get over there, and you can just land on the new note right in time. And because that open D is ringing out down there, then it won't, that open D will cover the actual shift, so it'll end up sounding better and be smoother if you switch to the 3 right here. So just take note of that. Okay. So then the next thing, now that we've got our 3 right here, then our fingerings down here become 2, and then this is 4. This is still the 3 right here, and then the B is open in the middle, and then the 1 is on top. Now, here's where I was talking about we have to break the rules. This is why right here, is that's going to this chord right here. This is an E chord. And so the way that we've got to finger this is 2, 1, 0, 0. That's our fingering on that one. But if you'll notice, the 1 is way up here on the top, and then it has to get down to the 3rd string, the G sharp, right there. And so that's where we have to hop really fast, because we're up here like this, and we have da, 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 and we've even got the 16th note right here, which means that within that 16th note we have to go. So I would practice this, just this one finger, the index finger, going from the 1st fret 1st string to 1st fret 3rd string. Really practice getting that move fast, and then the whole thing with the 3 and 1 down going to the 2 and 1 down. And just whenever you're practicing it, you don't have to go ba ba. That's what I'm doing, but you don't have to do that. What you can do, and is actually a better way to practice, would be hold that one for a second. Don't even do the next note again. Just go from there, move like lightning, and then play it. Da, ba, da, move, play, da, move, play, move, play, move, play. So that you're actually then practicing moving fast and waiting and then dropping in, instead of practicing going and just kind of clutching at it and just trying to grab it, and you know, that's a little bit precarious. Instead, give yourself some time on the note and then come down straight into it. Da, move, play, da, move, play. Once you practice it that way, then you can da, ba, da, 1 E and a 2, 1 E and a 2 E and a, or 4 E and a 1 as it is. So that's the way to practice that anyway. Now, notice too now that we have this upper note F, F, E, and now the E is now the top note up here, right? All the way to there, and then it comes back down. And so keeping an eye on that, basically then we can say, well, wait a second. This looks very similar to this. Let me just grab a clean score here. This looks very similar to this up here, doesn't it? So our bass line, we have a bass line and then a static note on the top going. Up here it's the A, down here it's the E. So so we can treat them very similar if we wanted to, as far as the way that we practice them, meaning first play just the 1, 2, 3. Here, if we look at this first note right here, see, this is why, okay, here's a case in point here, is that here we have an accent, right? And they're saying to accent this note, but then this is very similar material down here, but this would be that note, but we're not accenting that. And so it's inconsistent. One more reason to just be wary of what you see in scores, and know that it's not always the best, especially with accents, articulations, dynamics. It's not always the best idea, and oftentimes it's the editor, some guy who is the one who actually decided to have this printing of it or whatever. it's the person that did it, that it's not the composer, basically. And even if it is the composer, oftentimes they don't necessarily get it the best choice either. They often do, depending on the composer, but they might not, or they might not have made the best musical choice themselves. And so we have to basically rise above the music, because we're the ones that have to actually play it as performers. Even if you are just a beginning player or something, you're still a performer. You're the one performing the music, even if you're not performing it for anybody but your cat. Then you can, it's up to you to actually, you've got to be able to carry it off. So it's just like if you if you had to make a speech somewhere and there was this word that you couldn't pronounce right, or that if you have a stammer on a particular letter or something like that and you can't say ST words, then avoid ST words when you get in front of people. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with, it just, if you can't pull it off, you can't pull it off. And so same way with this. With music, it's got to be so that you can actually sell it. But you can't just change things randomly. That has to be for a good reason. We always start with the score and then say, well, if it needs to change, then it can. It's not a free-for-all. I mean, we do want to start with what they had in mind and then switch it up if we need to. So anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to this section right here. This section right here is the exact same issue as up here. So here we have this to right here, and by the same token, we have this to, how many bars is that? 1, 2, and a note, 1, 2, and a note to right here. So I would practice those side by side then, just like we did up here with this stuff up here. How we practice that and that, and then we practice this and this. Then also, we're going to do the exact same thing down here. Practice these two next to each other. They happen to be next to each other in the music, but you could still plan to do that as well. So here we have, I'm not going to spend any more time on this. It's because it's kind of the same thing. The fingerings on these are good in the fingered score. So here we jump back down. Let's go to the next. So here we go to this. I do want to say something though. Here we have our next section. So we have, basically these are our sections, right? 1, 2, and 3. Doing pretty much the same thing. These 2-bar sections. So we're starting softly right here, right? We're starting soft and crescendoing. But instead of coming back down right here and doing it all again, how about we do this? What if we crescendo, slowly crescendo, this whole thing up to here, and then start this loud, and then decrescendo it back down to right here. That way, we're taking these 2 little bits and we're making a bigger bit out of it. It's kind of a bigger thoughts. A bigger idea, basically. We're making it into a larger musical idea. Let me play for you just a couple of the 2 different ways, just so you can hear why I'm doing that. So basically, so then is one big idea instead of 2 little ideas, which would be the big search. Instead, why not just one big thing? You could play it either way, and it's a personal decision you'll have to make. I like to make things as big as possible. I like to make sections as big as possible, lines as long as possible. I like to segue from one thing to the next as much as possible so that it stays as cohesive and moving forward as possible. So this is one way of doing it. This is the way I do it. So then coming back down, we've got the piano again right here, and we would basically do the same thing. We would just crescendo it up, just like they're saying here. Keep it soft through here, and then crescendo it From here, we'll talk about the ending in a minute. So here, whenever you make a change like this, I would make sure that you don't accent this. Accent, no. So don't accent that little spot right there. Because we're moving down to, it's easy because it's a new note to really hammer it, but don't do it. Don't accent this note. Just gonna play it softly. A little. So play it softly and then crescendo as we get through here. And then how are we going to wind up this? Let's look at the ending now. Let's look at this ending. So starting right. Basically we're doing the same thing, and then pretty much from here. If you'll notice from here, these are basically in little 2-bar sections, right? From there to there, even though it looks longer on the page, from there to there. And so these we're dealing with these 2-bar sections here. And then we have this last 2-bar section, and then this little ending thing, right? This little ending thing. And so looking at this last little 2-bar section right here, then from here we have something different in the top, right? We haven't really been changing notes within this pattern. It's mainly been static notes or constant notes, repeated notes. So starting right before the bar line, is the end. So here we have a high note, which means we're going to decrescendo up to that note. Dum, dum, da, dum, and then move forward, crescendo back this way towards that. Dum, da, dum, dum, back off, bottom, bottom. I like to think of it as winding back and slinging it. Da, 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 da. 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4, a 1. Move forward. Da-dum. Back off back to this high note again right there. And then crescendo. Da-dum. And then I personally think, so just to finish this up. Da-dum, da-dum. So 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. Sorry, 4 and a 1. Back off, da-dum. And then 2. That's basically the section. And then we have bump, bump, 5-1 or E7 to A minor. And I would be very strong. It is Maestoso. This song is named Maestoso after all. So we might as well, right? We might as well play it out. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. Now, sometimes whenever I start doing this type of work right here with people, this type of stuff that we just did, then they see all these get quieters and be quiet on this note and all this kind of stuff, and then they think that the whole thing has to be quiet. That's not necessarily so. This whole thing can be actually very, very out. It just means relative to the notes around it, this is how it's going to go. So it's like you could have notes getting louder and softer up here, or you could have notes getting louder and softer down here. It could all be very quiet, and we could still be getting louder and softer and louder and softer, or it could be very loud, and we still get very louder and softer. So the bass line could be very high. That way, whenever you come off to the F, it doesn't have to be very quiet, and you could use the energy and just keep the basic volume up crescendoing so that you're using your opportunities to get loud again as soon as you back off. Boom, dum, dum, I'm back loud again. Back off, dum. And that way the whole thing ends powerfully. Another way, I would definitely, though, with this right here, I would definitely think boom, boom, separate things unto themselves. It's not related to the stuff that comes before it. It's this, it's the ending. It's the big cadence at the ending, that is right there. So that is its own thing. So separate it in your mind. I mean, it has to connect with the other music, of course, but separate it in your mind as something different so that you can be emphatic about that. Now, there's another way of doing this. Of course, there are a million ways of doing this, but we're going to talk about another way of doing this. For this, we could actually decrescendo it. So just like for here, just like we did this 4 bars, we got louder, and then we got softer. We could do the same exact thing here, getting louder up to here, getting softer back down to here, and then, let's get rid of that. And then do 2 big accents, bum, bum, at the end, very loud. Forte, forte. We could do it that way. It's just a different way that we could do it. Let's listen to it really quick. I'm going to play it from this section right there. Quieter now. Now big. So that it gets louder, it gets back quiet, and then we get big at the end again. Surprise ending. Something like that. It's another way. I would probably go with the first one and just keep the energy up at that last one and basically think of this whole thing as one big crescendo on the last 4 bars. It's another way to do it. Okay, those are some issues. Those are some dynamic things that we could that you could play with, right? Now I want to talk about one more thing with this piece, and that's balancing the chords. So check this out. When we have these chords all over the place, right? They're here, they're down here, right? There are these chords. Here's one. Oops. There's one. There's one. Whenever we have more than 2 notes, right? Whenever we have more than 2 notes, it's a chord. Or 2 notes is a chord too, but you know what I'm saying. For this piece, all of these places right here. Well, whenever we have this, remember that for this particular piece, luckily, the upper line is the melody. So what we want to do is poke that A finger out, your ring finger, poke it out further so that whenever you grab the string, it's louder. And there's I did a whole post on doing these balancing chords. But just for these last 2 chords of the piece, I'll just talk about it. The melody is dum, bum. It's the E string. So if you play your chord and go, I played the wrong notes. It doesn't bring out the melody. We have to make sure that that high note is what we hear, even though we have all these other notes playing. So if you really want to be listening for, it's the E we want to hear instead of, or something like that. Keep the melody riding all the way to the end. You'll still hear the harmony, but it just makes it really clean, and your listener will really understand what's going on if we bring out that melody note. I'll put a link below this to the to my tutorial on balancing chords, and but it's something it will really bring your playing out, and especially with this piece at the beginning, for instance, like the third measure, right up here. Sorry. Then, well, the moving line is below it. So that's not a terribly good example because it's just a static thing, but still you want to be able to bring out that melody on every single one of them. All right, that's it. I hope that works well for you. Practice well. Always pick things apart and question what you know, and even more, question what you don't know and say, what don't I know and how could I approach this differently in my practice? In every single practice, how could I do something new that I've never really done before, or really work on something different that I thought of yesterday that I still can't do very well, instead of just blasting through and sight reading the piece to death over and over and over again. Because that's a much better way of practicing. You'll get better much faster if you ask better questions. And a better question is, how could I practice this differently? Or how could I understand this more? Those are good questions. Or what do these parts sound like separately is a great section. And how do these parts relate to each other? What parts are similar to other parts in the piece? These type of questions will really help you in your practice. And you'll get much better at playing music much faster. So I hope that works for you. Please subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to Classical Guitar Shed. And be well. Take care.